Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. So glad to be with you all. In about 15 minutes now, we are going to begin our broadcast of episode 5 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. Today's focus is Heartbeat of Life, how diet and lifestyle can end the world's #1 killer. Cardiovascular disease causes more than 14 million deaths every single year around the world. As you're going to learn today, most of those can be prevented with diet and lifestyle, and many heart disease cases can be reversed. If you just joined us, we will be starting episode 5 in about 14 minutes, and I'm Ocean Robbins, your host, welcoming you here. As we move through the day, please continue to post and share in the comments section on the broadcast page. Tell us what you are learning. What does this mean for your life? What are your top takeaways? What have you heard that you want to shout from the rooftops or that just means something in your life? And reply to other people's comments so we can keep the connection going and growing and build this powerful community. You know, it can be so easy to feel alone or isolated or like a voice in the wilderness when you want to eat differently than the norm. We live in a toxic food culture all around us. Unhealthy foods are advertised, they're mainstreamized, they're normalized, they're subsidized. So it can feel like an uphill battle just to choose simple, wholesome, healthy foods for your family. But together we can build a momentum. We can feel the power of a community that is turning the tide, that is shifting the course of things. And that power can help each of us to feel stronger and less alone and less isolated and more rooted in our convictions. And from there, when we are rooted in our convictions, folks, we can help to move the world. Sally said, Ocean, once again, you have outdone yourself. When you said beauty comes from within, it took me right back to my childhood. The first adult conversation I remember having with my grandmother was when I was about 8 years old, and she told me, beauty is not only skin deep, it comes from within. Thank you, Sally. And I'm so glad. Sounds like you were able to join us for yesterday's episode when we looked at beauty and vitality from the inside out. We heard from Kimberly, who said, hello from Wyoming. I'm learning so much valuable information. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Well, Kimberly, so glad that you are with us. Thank you for being in this journey. Marianne said, thank you, John, Ocean, and FRN for this beautiful and inspiring information. An aha moment for me was when Ocean said a kiwi fruit increases beneficial gut microbiota by 35% in 24 hours and tastes so much better than a pill, LOL. Yes, Marianne, kiwi fruit does taste better than a pill, at least to me, especially when it's ripe. And it's remarkable how fast our gut microbiome can change. The bacteria in there have very short lifespans, which means they're constantly reproducing and dying. And when we feed them the right foods, they can proliferate rapidly. It's often one of the first things that changes when you change your diet. When you feed the good guys, as they say, you are creating the conditions for them to proliferate, and your microbiome can change very quickly. And that creates a host of rippling positive health benefits. Melanie said, just a random query. I was told that almond milk reduces the absorption of omega-3s when you have it with flax. I use almond milk in my smoothies in the summer and in my porridge in the winter. Am I not increasing my omegas when I add flax also? Thank you for this series. It is wonderful. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for asking. So first, to address the core of your question, there is no evidence I've ever seen or heard of that almonds reduce omega-3 absorption or bioavailability. So I don't know where that notion came from, but I have not seen anything to back it up. There's a lot of things out there on the internet or that people say in various places, and that doesn't mean they're backed up by science. Now, since you talked about smoothies and flax, I just want to make sure folks are aware of the powerful benefits of flax seeds and chia seeds. People think about them as a source of omega-3 fatty acids, which they absolutely are, and a great one. But flax seeds, for example, also contain plant-based lignans, which are incredible for cardiovascular health. And flax and chia seeds contain rich sources of protein as well as wonderful fibers. So they are whole foods that are fantastic, and they are super rich in omega-3 fatty acids. And the thing you want to remember is that you do want to grind your flax seeds up. A blender can usually do it as long as it's a good strong blender, or you can grind them up in a coffee grinder that you use dedicated for the purpose. We grind up flax and chia meal and then have it in a little bag in the fridge, and we just pop it out, and you can easily add a couple tablespoons or even a quarter cup if you're feeling bold and adventurous, to your oatmeal or to a casserole or to lots of different foods. Tastes very simple and mild. Key thing is you want to keep it fresh, so you don't want to, if you buy store-bought flax meal, it could be old, and that could be a problem. But when you're cycling it through in your own fridge, just grind a cup or so or a half cup at a time, and then you just keep that going. Flaxseed can be wonderful. You don't want to try to eat them whole, even if they're soaked, because they will just go in one end and out the other. Your body cannot digest a whole flax seed and break it down unless you chew it up. Some people eat chia porridges, by the way, and they don't chew enough, and those will also go in one end and out the other. So even with chia seeds, which are not as tough as flax seeds, even if they're soaked, they still may not break down. So chew, chew, chew if you're using whole chia seeds. Mickey said, wow, I wasn't really interested in watching this episode because I don't use any beauty products, referring to episode 4 yesterday. Now that I finished watching it, I'm teary-eyed from the wonderful words from each of the specialists and fellow humans. Thank you, Ocean and John and all others. Well, Mickey, thank you for being in this with us, and I'm so glad that you found yesterday's episode moving. We heard from George, who said, being a farmer that never uses sunscreen, I probably get way too much UV exposure, but vitamin D level is more important to me. I even do regular tanning bed sessions in the winter. Our risk of skin cancer is worth preventing much more serious cancers. Well, George, thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for being a farmer and growing food for us. I think we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to our farmers. We don't talk about them nearly enough. Sometimes farming can be very hard work. It doesn't usually pay super well, and it is absolutely essential. We all need it to eat. And there are a lot of farmers who work very hard, and a lot of farmers who are doing so with a great love of land and a great love of nurturing a healthy environment. And we thank you for growing food for humans. Now, about vitamin D. Want to make sure folks know, first of all, if you can get at least 20 minutes of sunshine on half of your or more of your body each day, your body's probably going to make all the vitamin D that you need. But not everybody is this true. And it can be good to get your levels checked, even if you are getting lots of sun exposure, to see where they're at. Now, let me say that tanning beds, unfortunately, do not help your body make vitamin D. So no benefit there, but they can contribute to risk of skin cancer. So not a lot of rationale for that one. In terms of blood levels, you want to be, most experts would say, between 30 to 50 nanograms per milliliter of blood. Higher may also be optimal for some people. There's a growing body of research linking strong vitamin D levels in the body to increased immune function and overall health and wellness on many levels. So vitamin D is just like a super healthy nutrient to have in your body. And it's also sometimes called the sunshine vitamin, not just because you get it from the sun, but because it makes you feel a little happier. It can be good for mood. This may be one of the reasons why people tend to have more depression in the winter when they're getting less sun exposure. So if your blood levels are on the lower end, you may want to consider taking a supplement. There are two main forms of vitamin D supplements, vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 seems to be much more effective in raising blood vitamin D levels than vitamin D2. You can get vegan sources of it, by the way, for those who are concerned about that. It seems best to take vitamin D3 along with vitamin K2. So you probably want to look for a supplement that combines both. The reason is that vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium, and vitamin K2 helps transport it to the bones and the teeth, which is where you want it, and to keep it from ending up in your arteries, which is where you don't want it. We'll be talking a little more about calcium today. Morgan said, there was mention of avoiding a diet that's too low in fat because fat's an essential element for health and beauty. How do I balance that against the whole foods philosophy that avoids oils completely? Well, Morgan, thanks for your question. So incorporating healthy fats into your diet is simpler than it might seem, even if you're following a whole food plant-based diet that avoids processed oils. You can get these essential fats from foods like avocados, nuts and seeds, even olives, though you want to be mindful of the sodium content if you're eating a lot of olives. These are all natural sources of fatty acids that are important for your health. When it comes to cooking, there are a lot of oil-free methods to explore, like steaming, baking, or no oil sauteing. You can use substitutes like unsweetened applesauce or mashed bananas, tahini, or unsweetened plant-based yogurts to keep dishes moist and flavorful. When you integrate whole food fats into your meals, you can enjoy deliciousness in a whole new way. You can add a few tablespoons of chia seeds or ground flax seeds to your oatmeal. You can top a hearty bowl of soup or some plant-based tacos with avocado slices, or toss in a handful of mixed nuts into a salad. Nuts and seeds are really your friend here. By opting for whole food forms of fat, you not only receive essential fatty acids, but you also get benefit from all the other important nutrients like protein and fiber that are not found in bottled oils. And when you add a source of whole food-based fat to most of your meals every day, you'll ensure that you consume enough dietary fat to maintain a healthy and well-balanced whole food plant-based diet. You'll notice that many of our speakers promote getting your fats from whole foods. I'll say that the research on olive oil and avocado oil is also fairly positive. We don't have much research on flax oil, but I suspect it would be as well. So if you do want to include some olive or avocado oil in your diet, or some flax oil in your diet, that may be fine as well. If you just joined us, folks, we're going to be starting episode 5 in the Food Revolution Summit in just a couple of minutes. I'm Ocean Robbins, sharing some welcoming words, and today our focus is on cardiovascular health. Heart disease takes more human lives than any other cause of death on earth. And while tens of millions of people rely on medications to keep their symptoms and their risk at bay, these drugs often come with serious side effects. The good news is that all natural food and lifestyle habits have been proven to slash the risk of heart disease dramatically. And the number one place to start is with the food on your plate. This episode is going to offer evidence-based dietary recommendations for preventing and reversing cardiovascular disease, including the role of antioxidants, fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, and other nutrients to promote cardiovascular health. We're going to unravel the culprits behind heart attacks and strokes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol levels, and we're going to clear the confusion about fats and cholesterol and sugar and salt and processed foods. Well, now it's almost time to begin with episode 5. So again, as we move through this day, please continue sharing what you think, sharing your top takeaways and aha moments and what this means in your life. You can refresh the comments using the button provided there so you can see the latest ones that have been submitted. Here we go.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is impactful.
The food revolution is transformative.
Compassion.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is life.
The future of medicine.
Long overdue.
It's time. It's time.
It is time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is our future.
It's power to change the world.
And it's available for everyone.
It's time for a food revolution.
It's time for a food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Now is the time.
Every moment of every day, your heart is beating and keeping you alive. Right now, it's delivering oxygen and nutrients to every one of your body's 37 trillion cells. And it keeps right on going whether you're sleeping or awake and whether you're paying attention or not.
But right now, billions of us, including almost half of all Americans, have cardiovascular disease. Most people don't even know they've got it until it's too late. It may show up as heart disease or high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke, sexual dysfunction, chest pain, lightheadedness, or fatigue. Whatever the symptoms may be, cardiovascular disease is by far the world's leading cause of death.
What's causing this crisis? According to thousands of studies published in peer-reviewed medical journals, the biggest factors are specific foods we eat and particular things we do. And that's actually great news because it means that the power to reclaim your health lies in your hands. I'm John Robbins.
And I'm Ocean Robbins, and you are watching the 2024 Food Revolution Summit.
We have today an overwhelming body of evidence that a whole foods, plant-powered diet can be extraordinarily protective against cardiovascular disease.
And yet, still today, most cardiologists are not familiar with this data. Why is that?
If you were to attend the American College of Cardiology annual conference and checked out the exhibit floor, you'd see about 300 exhibitors, all with fancy booths and sophisticated ways of attracting your attention. Of all these hundreds of exhibitors, probably 99% represent a drug or an invasive procedure or an intervention. And this is the case even though we know that what people are eating is the number one factor in determining their heart health.
The drug industry obviously has an enormous amount of control over how medicine is practiced, which is one of the reasons that when you look at medical education, you see an almost complete disregard for nutrition.
And also, to my eyes, drugs sometimes seem to give patients license to stick with bad habits by masking the symptoms of disease. There's a phrase, the McLipitor syndrome, that refers to people who take statins and then thinking that since the drug has them covered, they can eat all the Big Macs they might want.
Statins are the biggest selling class of pharmaceutical compounds of all time, with annual sales of more than $22 billion. The most popular statin, Lipitor, is also the most financially successful drug product of all time.
Yes, and these drugs have unquestionably saved lives. But I must say that it gives me pause to see cardiologists eating hamburgers and taking statins and telling their patients it's fine to do the same. Now, fortunately, there are many cardiologists and other physicians who are waking up to the incredible healing power of an optimal diet for your heart and your life. Some of them are becoming world-changing authorities and lighting the way to a healthier future for all of us.
And we're grateful to have many of them in this summit.
Men and women equally are at risk for the number one killer in the Western world, dropping dead suddenly, a very, very dramatic, sad episode that affects more than 1,000 people a day in the United States, called sudden cardiac death. Others manifest heart attacks but survive, but their life's never the same. Some people just have their quality of life because they're short of breath, they're having angina discomfort. Some people are burdened by medications, procedures, expenses, early retirements. It is an enormous problem, and we know it's a interplay of lifestyle and genetics, and in terms of lifestyle, food being the most important choices, and it is a largely reversible disease.
Cardiovascular disease is not an isolated thing. If you have cardiovascular disease, chances are every blood vessel in your body is affected. What a lot of people don't realize is when you have a heart attack or we do a stent or a bypass surgery, the disease doesn't go away. We've literally bypassed it or put a piece of metal in and pushed up all those years of cheesesteaks somebody was eating, and they're still there. They're squished up against the walls. And so coronary artery disease through an inflammatory mechanism is a systemic disease that affects every blood vessel in the body, which is why we typically see people who have cardiovascular disease, coronary disease have cerebrovascular disease, peripheral arterial disease, erectile dysfunction. They're all vascular diseases. So in my book, they're all the same thing, just in different vascular beds.
Essentially, 100% of Americans, except for the very small percentage who follow the proper diet and lifestyle strictly, have some degree of plaque that's built up in their coronary arteries and other vessels in their body. Cholesterol-based plaque, fatty streaks are the start, and it progresses and eventually in adulthood can trigger an event. We know this plaque starts in childhood. It's a lifelong process. 3-year-olds already have fatty streaks. There's even a crazy study that showed pregnant women who have crazy high genetic cholesterol, their unborn fetuses are already developing fatty streaks in their arteries.
Sadly, it's the standard American lifestyle. That's basically a heart disease in a nutshell. I mean, I'll give you the way I think about it, the way I relate it to my patients. So first, the American curse, as I call it, is you work hard your whole life, you save your money, you retire, and then what do you look forward to? Heart attacks, strokes, dementia, erectile dysfunction. Sounds like a terrible way to retire. And when I was growing up, and I grew up in New York, right? So, 3 inches of cream cheese, 7 inches of pastrami, piece of pizza weighed 5 pounds. 100% of my parents, nobody was, friends' parents, nobody was spared, had heart attacks, bypass surgery, breast cancer, colon cancer, or they dropped dead. Why? We ate and drank like kings and queens and barely moved.
When you look at the numbers, it is just absolutely mind-boggling that heart disease has been the #1 cause of death in our country every single year since 1919. The last time it wasn't the #1 cause of death was 1918, which was the Spanish flu pandemic. Every year since then, heart disease #1, cancer #2. About 500,000 Americans every year die from heart disease. And to put that in perspective, that's more than the number of American soldiers that died in combat in all wars in American history combined ever. 1 year of heart disease deaths.
And heart attacks can happen to even seemingly very healthy people at times when they might least expect it. This is something that's well known to cardiologists, and particularly to the cardiologist we just heard from, Dr. Stephen Loam. Dr. Loam experienced something extraordinary during the Monterey Bay Half Marathon in late 2022. He started that beautiful November day thinking he was just going to enjoy running the race. But as you will see, life had other plans for him.
A miraculous story that's almost too good to be true. Sunday, November 13th, 2022, the Monterey Bay Half Marathon kicks off at 7. Greg Gonzalez, Michael Heileman, and Dr. Stephen Loam set out on the route.
I felt really well, no issues whatsoever.
Gonzalez gets to mile 3.
I go, oh my gosh, 10 more to go, no problem. Last thing I remembered.
I saw a runner collapse.
Dr. Loam, a chomp cardiologist, happens to be steps behind him.
There was no pulse and he wasn't breathing. And I thought, oh my gosh, full cardiac arrest.
He starts CPR, unbelievably his first time doing it outside of the hospital. Meantime, Heileman runs by, seeing the runner down, remembering his father's heart attack during a race years ago.
We saw him down and getting CPR, and were saying that we were hoping that he was okay. And as we went, we started talking about, what had happened to my dad and how rare it sort of was.
It was the longest 5 minutes of my life waiting for the defibrillator to come, but we got it there.
I woke up in an ambulance going, uh-oh, something happened.
It was a fatal arrhythmia called ventricular fibrillation. The only way for that to go away is a shock, and without a shock, you don't make it. But he did wake up, and we got him into the ambulance stable, and a little frazzled, but I still wasn't last place, so I figured might as well just keep on running.
And this guy, how lucky was he at mile 3? He could have been on a training run and nobody would have been around and he would have been done because without the intervention, he wouldn't have made it. And my kids at that time, my 2 older kids, Jaden and Ian, 16 and 15 years old, they're way ahead of me thinking, Dad's just slow. What's going on, Dad? So I said, all right, I'm going to keep going.
So both Dr. Loam and Heileman continue on their way. Heileman crosses the finish line first.
I started to feel dizzy, so I held onto the rail for a second. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up.
Dr. Loam finishes the race moments later.
I threw my arms up in the air thinking, yay, I finished, thank goodness. And then I hear somebody say, we need some help over here. And I thought to myself, you gotta be kidding. He probably just fainted. There's no way this is happening again.
But it did. Dr. Loam jumps into action for a second time that day, performing CPR to save another runner's life.
He had no pulse, he wasn't breathing, and probably within 20 or 30 seconds of him collapsing, started chest compressions and CPR once again. We were able to hook him up and shock him within about 1 minute, and he woke up real quick, confused, and stopped the Strava app on his watch so he can record the time and tried to get up.
It was hard to believe. I had no symptoms. I felt fine the whole race.
It's really mind-blowing. When you look at the research, they say about 1 in 200,000 race participants in a half marathon or marathon have a cardiac arrest. There's about 5,000 runners there. That makes it about a 1 in 40 chance of it happening once, and about 1 in 1,600 chance of it happening twice in a race. But what are the odds of them both surviving? Only 30% of people survive, and the same cardiologist literally right behind them both. Absolutely crazy.
Ends up, both these runners had no prior history of heart disease. They had had no prior symptoms. They both had severe stenosis, blockage in the left anterior descending coronary artery, otherwise known as the widowmaker, which the stress of all the running and everything, and when you're not getting enough blood flow, triggered the fatal rhythm. Both of them were treated at the hospital, at the community hospital in Monterey Peninsula, and made full recoveries, complete full recoveries with no residual leftover neurologic defect or anything, and their heart strength remains completely strong. That is the message to give, is that, okay, you survived one event. Thank goodness you got lucky. You know how many people who don't survive the first event, it's very sad. And now you have a second chance. And heart disease is preventable and even reversible with more significant changes. And if you don't make those changes, very likely that another event is going to happen. This is when you have their absolute undivided attention. They just survived a big event. They're stuck in the hospital. They have nothing else to do. And so the message is, you know, this is a disease that has been developing over decades because of lifestyle. The treatment should be treating the cause of the problems. And of course, so ecstatic to say that both of them follow a nearly exclusively whole food plant-based diet to this day.
Both given a second chance at life. And with that second chance, an opportunity to share their story and spread the word about heart health.
They both changed their diet, they're exercising, they're doing great. We hope to use this to, inspire other people to learn CPR, eat healthy, and do all the right things, because prevention of heart disease is way more powerful than trying to fight heart disease after it happens.
Remarkably, these three men, Dr. Loam and the two men who suffered heart attacks that day, all ran the Monterey Bay Half Marathon together the next year.
Michael and Greg were incredibly fortunate to have Dr. Stephen Loam there to save their lives when they suffered their heart attacks. And they were perhaps equally fortunate that Dr. Loam is a lifestyle medicine practitioner who could help inspire them to change their diets and optimize their heart health. By doing so, he might actually be saving each of their lives a second time by dramatically reducing their odds of ever suffering a heart attack again.
So true. There's a widespread belief today, including among many doctors. This belief is that age-related increases in heart attack risk and in blood pressure are simply inevitable consequences of aging. But that is not true. So, what is really making elevated blood pressure and heart disease so common today? The reality is that it's the constant and continual exposure to ultra-processed foods and to the high amounts of salt and animal products. And lifestyle factors like smoking and stress and lack of exercise play a huge part too.
You'll find that the vast majority of cardiologists out there don't find high blood pressure particularly an enthralling topic. But the sad part is 50% of Americans have high blood pressure. And we usually define that as anything over 120 over 80. We usually don't start treating until it's 130 over 80, but many times 120 is what we're looking for. What most people don't realize is that high blood pressure, they call it the silent killer. And the reason is it's often clinically silent until it's almost too late. But when your blood pressure is real high for long enough, it's slowly causing damage to your brain, it's causing damage to your kidneys, it's causing blood vessel damage, which are the root causes for erectile dysfunction and other sexual dysfunctions. And so you can imagine that these things are slowly eroding away the health of someone. Heart disease is one of those things that kind of lurks in the background, and then all of a sudden it's too late.
Heart disease can indeed be a killer. And for many people, it sneaks up on them, and then, by the time they realize what's happening, it's too late. But for those who survive a heart attack, and for those who experience the heart disease of loved ones, it can be a wake-up call. And that was the case for Dr. Helen Powell-Stoddard.
Today, Dr. Powell-Stoddard runs a state-of-the-art clinic, Pain to Wellness Healthcare in Madison, Alabama. She uses her extensive medical knowledge and her experience to help people find freedom from pain and to live in greater health. After Dr. Stoddard experienced the death of her mother at a young age, she wanted to understand everything she could about heart disease. She wanted to understand its connection to the food that we eat.
My mom developed congestive heart failure. She had high blood pressure. And so what she ended up developing was a very thick heart muscle that was so hard and so thick that she had less blood inside of her heart, which means if she had less blood inside of her heart because the chamber was just more narrow, because the walls of the heart were so thick, that meant that every time she pumped out blood, there was just a little bit of blood going out into all of the parts of the body that need it. And so I remember her congestive heart failure had worsened to the point where her ejection fraction, how much blood gets out with every pump of the heart, was about 10%. Wow. That was very, very difficult. You know, anything more than 70%, you know, you don't get worried about. But my mom was pumping out 10%. I was young at the time. I didn't know. I was practicing. I was becoming a doctor, but I wasn't yet a doctor. And I didn't know. I knew that there was something inherently wrong with the foods that we were consuming when we were growing up. I remember just talking to when my mom would want something because, you know, people that have diseases, especially diet-exacerbated illnesses, really have those diet-exacerbated illnesses because of dietary choices. And so I remember her reaching for something and I would say, no, don't let her have that. But I'm the 7th of 8 children, right? And they're like, why are you stopping her? Just let her have it. It's just a little of this. It's just a little of that. But what I came to realize much later in life is that that little something kept adding up. And that addition, those little things that kept adding one more thing and one more thing was what took my mother's life away.
During the 1960s, heart disease was on the rise in the U.S. What doctors commonly call coronary artery disease is usually caused by a condition of the arteries that supply the heart with blood. What happens is that over time, a fatty substance in the bloodstream called cholesterol builds up in the coronary arteries, restricting the blood flow to the heart. This can ultimately cause several problems, from severe chest pain called angina to heart attacks.
Let's talk about one of the most important and controversial heart health topics, which is saturated fat. In the last few years, we've been hearing a lot about studies that are said to exonerate saturated fat.
Yes, we have. And probably the most frequently cited among those studies was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine in 2014. That and other studies like it have become the basis for many health authorities now telling us that there's no connection between saturated fat consumption and risk of heart disease.
So what's going on here? Are these studies right?
Well, I've looked very carefully at these studies, and they aren't saying what some people are saying they're saying. What these studies actually show is that when people reduce their intake of saturated fat and replace those calories in their diet with refined carbohydrates and sugar, there's no advantage at all. They don't lower their heart disease rates or anything else. So there is no benefit to eating less saturated fat if it means that instead you're eating more sugar and other refined carbs. But that doesn't mean that butter and meat and cheese belong in a healthy diet. What we are actually learning is that sugar and refined carbs, as well as saturated fat, need to be minimized in any diet designed for optimal health. And there's something else that these studies are actually telling us. When people reduce their intake of saturated fat and replace those calories in their diet with either healthier fats or with healthier foods in general, they do have much lower rates of heart disease, of type 2 diabetes, of obesity, and they do benefit from many other positive health outcomes.
Yes, so when the question is asked, which is to blame for heart disease, sugar or saturated fat, the answer is both.
probably 2 dietary factors fuel heart disease more than any other in terms of the scientific focus since the 1950s and 1960s. 2 important dietary factors. One is the amount of saturated fat in the diet, and this gets so sciencey and technical people tune out because we've got omega-3 fats and monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. But basically, saturated fat, all we got to talk about is animal foods and coconut oil. You like cheese, you like bacon, you like red meat, you like egg yolk, you're getting a lot of saturated fat. And if you like coconut oil, you're getting a lot of saturated fat. And hundreds of studies suggest when you have a high amount of saturated fat in your diet, you will raise your blood cholesterol level. Some of us are more sensitive to that. Some of us a little less sensitive. Some people are called hyperabsorbers. Put some cheese and egg yolk in their gut and your cholesterol will rocket. It'll double in a few weeks if you keep that up. Other people are a little less sensitive to it. And that will promote, not in a day, but over weeks, months, and years, that hardening, that calcification, that heart attack and death risk. The science is strong. Every health organization worth their weight in arugula suggests you lower and minimize your saturated fat intake. And the second one is added sugar. And this has been a big debate over the years. Which one is worse? Well, they're both worse. And we live in a society, we've got added sugar, obviously, in our drinks, and we have it in our sweets, and we have it in our barbecue sauces, and we have it in our ketchup. And there's no doubt it might be a little less direct. The added sugar, you gain some weight, you become more insulin resistant, your triglycerides go up, your cholesterol goes up, you have some inflammation going on. So being sensitive, and the joy is when you eat a close to nature whole food plant-based diet, you're going to have a naturally low saturated fat diet, and you're going to have a naturally low added sugar diet.
So if you look through time and all of the various research that's been done over the years, whether it's the portfolio diet, the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stopping hypertension, Mediterranean diet, and a whole variety of others, including there's a Lancet diet, some of the Blue Zone diets, what do they share? They're all low-fat, minimally processed, plant-based diets. That, to me, is the magic bullet for virtually every disease. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to eat a bunch of carrots and cure your whatever. But if you eat that way for long enough, you have a very good shot at reversing or halting, at the very minimum, disease progression. I think in general, the vast majority of expert consensus would tell you that saturated fats are not so good. So we should really get rid of them and try to remove them. And you can even get saturated fats from things that are plants like coconuts and other things. So really try to reduce those. And then I usually tell people to limit fats. For some patients who are very high risk, I actually will advise them to limit it altogether, get rid of it if they can.
When we look at large-scale studies, we see consistently the consumption of red meat and processed red meat are the number one assailants. They're top one in terms of like killers that are out there. But we also see from a standpoint of inflammation, which is an area of concern, and dyslipidemia, that chicken and turkey and white meats can also trigger the same process that's there. We're learning so much more about this.
Sugar, refined grains, animal foods, especially processed meats and higher fat animal-based foods, but even the low-fat animal-based foods, which is a huge misconception in our culture that chicken and fish and low-fat dairy products are actually good for you. There's plenty of evidence, scientific evidence in major journals that show that even those lean meats can cause endothelial injury and inflammation. They can elevate C-reactive protein, which is one of our inflammatory markers that we look at. And that's why the more you get definitely the processed foods and also the animal-based foods completely out of your diet, the better you're going to be in both your LDL cholesterol number and protecting your arteries from damage and inflammation. And look at those blue zones, which are nearly 100% whole food plant-based from the day they were born. And that's why heart disease essentially doesn't exist when people truly follow that pattern from early in life.
And that's where I think lifestyle intervention really is powerful because, people will tell you there's only 2 ways to learn, right? One's through pleasure, one's through pain. And heart attack, pretty painful. And if we can get people to make a massive change from that point forward, can we make them much less likely to have a heart attack? And the answer is yes.
A Harvard doctor once told me, if food was medicine, I would have learned about it in medical school. With attitudes like that, it is remarkable to me that any doctors are able to break free from the pill for every ill conditioning.
Fortunately, more and more are. Let's hear next from Dr. Neil Cooper, a physician who got into lifestyle medicine because of what happened to his own health.
I was practicing basic standard American medicine, but when I was 56 years old, back in 2012, after working out one morning, early in the morning, and getting ready for a day of work, after the workout, I was having some of the worst indigestion or reflux I thought I've ever had. And the pain in my chest was so great, I had to sit down on the ground every time it came on. I made it to the pre-op area that morning and was getting ready for a full day of performing procedures with patients. And as I was talking to the nurse that day, the nurse looked at me and said, "You look terrible, Dr. Cooper. You should go home or go see somebody." And I said, "I'll check with somebody in a little bit." And right then and there, I dropped to the ground, clutching my chest, had 11 out of 10 chest pain. I couldn't speak and could barely catch my breath, so I was in the middle of a heart attack. And as you know, heart disease is the number one killer in this country. But I was so very fortunate to be inside of a healthcare facility at the time of my heart attack. At that point, I was rushed to the cardiac cath lab. The cardiologist put a catheter into my widowmaker artery in the heart and opened it up, put some stents in there, and saved my life that day. Had I had that heart attack somewhere else, I would have been dead.
So then you wake up from the operation and you've got stents and you got a new lease on life. What happened then?
Yeah, so I did what any other good patient would do. I worked very closely with my cardiologist to optimize the new 6 medications that I was going to be on. I went to all of my cardiac rehab appointments and took all sorts of tests to find out the status of my heart, what kind of damage I had, and what my prognosis was. I was just going to, do what standard medicine dictated at the time. However, I have to say that my wife was studying other information, and she was reading books by Caldwell Esselstyn, Joel Fuhrman, Neil Barnard, and she quickly learned that we needed to move to a whole food, plant-based diet for my health. And we transitioned from that Sunday afternoon to a whole food, plant-based diet till today. And it's been the best journey of my life.
So what happened to your, any lab results or your experience of life as you made that shift?
So we made that shift abruptly. We didn't baby step into it. We made a 100% transition. And I would say within by the 3rd or 4th week, I already was feeling so much different. I was sleeping much better already. I had so much more energy. And very quickly, all of my biometrics normalized. I began within the first month losing weight. And within months later, I was off all my medications and have no evidence of any residual heart disease.
And how is your health now?
My health now, honestly, is better than it was when I was much younger, 11, 12, 13, 14 years ago. So much more energy. I feel so much healthier, no medications, and the journey has been absolutely fantastic.
So you were a doctor practicing medicine, and this was new to you.
When I found out this information, I was so excited, but I was also angry at the time. Because how is it that I went through my whole medical career and I was on cutting edge medicine, putting catheters inside people's arteries, and how come I didn't know this? So I was angered by it, and it became a mission to educate myself, my patients, and particularly the medical group that I was in at the time at Kaiser Permanente. The future is absolutely learning more about lifestyle medicine and whole food plant-based diet in particular. And I'm very encouraged that although we don't get any nutrition training at all, I'm very encouraged to see the new medical students. I talk to groups of medical students, and I believe that they really get it. And I'm really encouraged that in the next generation or two, we will see whole foods as our primary treatment and medications as our secondary treatment.
Fortunately, you don't have to wait a generation or two until Western medicine fully grasps that whole foods should be our primary approach, both to treating and to preventing heart disease. You can put this information into practice in your own life now.
Yes. And there's no question that elevated blood cholesterol levels are one of the major risk factors for heart disease. But there have been a lot of questions and controversy about the connection, if any, between the cholesterol that we eat in our diets and the level of cholesterol in our bloodstream. So what's the truth about dietary cholesterol?
Dietary cholesterol has been a huge controversy, and one of the important teaching points for our audience here is the amount of saturated fat that the average American, as an example, eats. is tremendously more than the amount of dietary cholesterol they eat. An egg may have 200, 250 milligrams of cholesterol. Somebody told me that a toothpick weighs about 100 milligrams. So think about 2 toothpicks worth of cholesterol from a egg yolk. But you eat a cheeseburger, a milkshake, and French fries, you're going to get tens and tens of grams of saturated fat. So relatively, dietary cholesterol is a small, important, but small factor compared to saturated fat. Now, in reality, animal foods combine cholesterol and saturated fat. They go together. The only example that doesn't is coconut oil. Coconut oil is very rich in saturated fat, but because it's from a plant, it doesn't have cholesterol. Cholesterol only comes from the animal world. So with the exception of coconut oil, these two things track together. High saturated fat diets are going to be high cholesterol diets almost always. The latest USDA guidelines typically use language like lower dietary cholesterol to as low as possible. They don't put a number anymore, and that's created confusion. Now, a whole food plant-based diet, it's essentially a zero cholesterol diet, which is a joy if you watch palm oil and coconut oil as main ingredients or additives. So we do want to pay attention to dietary cholesterol, and every time you eat an apple and a bean salad, you can proudly say zero cholesterol in that meal.
If you have diabetes, you're twice as likely to have heart disease or a stroke compared to someone who doesn't have diabetes. And the longer you have diabetes, the more likely you are to develop heart disease. Why is that?
So diabetes is considered to be a cardiovascular or coronary artery disease risk equivalent. So when you have diabetes, you're automatically in a higher risk category. And the reason for that is that high blood sugar levels seem to be associated with inflammation, which also upsets the lining of the blood vessels and predisposes to heart attack and stroke. And there's really every study you'll ever look at that if you have diabetes, your risk for a heart attack or a stroke is high. Your risk for a lot of different cancers is high. Your risk for neuropathy is high. I mean, diabetes really robs people of their life, if you will.
The good news is that you can massively lower your risk for both heart disease and diabetes by eating a whole foods, plant-based diet.
Yes, you can. It's a stunning fact. We now know that a whole foods, plant-strong diet, along with a few other simple lifestyle practices like not smoking and getting regular exercise, can prevent more than 80% of all heart disease, can prevent more than 85% of all hypertension, and can prevent more than 90% of cases of type 2 diabetes. We're still learning about the many mechanisms by which it does that.
We know that meat consumption increases levels of a substance commonly referred to as TMAO. The more red meat someone eats, the more TMAO will be found in their blood and in their urine. So, what do you need to know about TMAO?
One of the most interesting new conversations in cardiology, advanced cardiology, is a molecule that goes by 4 letters, TMAO. It does stand for a chemical name, trimethylamine N oxide. Until 2011, this was in the science literature, but largely the science of fish, how do fish stay buoyant in deep, cold water where there's high pressure. And TMAO is a molecule found in some fish flesh that helps them stay alive under those extreme circumstances. But then the Cleveland Clinic published now thousands of papers around the world that they did a screen. What's in the blood that we don't know about that might be causing hardening of the arteries that we might want to focus on and learn about? And after their research, they found in both, unfortunately, animal models and then human blood, that TMAO is a molecule in our blood. They developed a blood test for it that is now available from labs. I draw it on all my patients, that your TMAO level goes above a normal range if your diet is particularly rich in egg yolk and red meat. I mean, this is a vegan cardiologist's dream research project, but it's authentic. And the researchers who are friends of mine at the Cleveland Clinic are not vegan. They weren't planning to destroy the meat and the egg yolk industry, but they did a pretty good job if you follow the science. And The higher your blood level, the higher the association of hardening of the arteries, scarring of kidneys and kidney disease, and almost any disease that's been studied. Dementia with a high TMAO, worse. Diabetes with a high TMAO, worse. Congestive heart failure with a high TMAO, worse. So it's a very powerful marker. And it may be more than a marker. There's some animal studies at least that show it literally causes hardening the arteries directly. So the hunt is on in the pharmaceutical industry and the academic world to find pills that will be patentable and will be TMAO blockers. And there will be some coming out. They're hot on that trail. But the joy, again, stop eating egg yolk, stop eating red meat. And there are some people that take vitamins that have carnitine and choline. If you take a big can of Monster energy drink, for example, you'll read on the label, it's very rich in carnitine. That can also bump your TMAO level up. So look at your vitamins, look at your energy drinks. Obviously, give up your energy drinks would be the advice. And it's a joy to check a TMAO level in a good, healthy eating vegan because it's going to be undetectable. And it's another way to interact with people, educate them about food, improve their outcome, and actually, prevent heart disease. That's what we're after. And it's blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, but now TMAO is another measurable factor to focus on.
Calcium is a very important mineral. We all know we need it for strong bones, and we need it for many other critical systems and tissues in our bodies as well.
Yeah, we want calcium in our bones, but where we don't want it is building up in our arteries. What is it that causes calcium to accumulate in our blood vessels instead of getting into our bones?
That is such a good question. Why it would deposit in your blood vessels. But we obviously calcium it's not just about building bones. Calcium, it really regulates so many body systems, and it's very important for the cardiovascular system. We need some, but to regulate every beat of our heart is dependent on calcium. And so we are going to have some calcium in our blood vessels, but we don't want an excessive buildup of calcium because that is what leads to, hardening of the arteries, if you will. I would imagine, if I'm to guess, inflammation is a factor there. And so when the endothelium is not healthy, we don't get enough nitric oxide, we have too much inflammation, that drives that process of, building up calcium deposits. And so again, it's eating a diet that's anti-inflammatory and that doesn't promote oxidative stress. I think those are probably keys.
The topic of calcium and calcifying your arteries is a very important topic and slightly confusing. It seems pretty clear that getting calcium from your diet, those are going to be plant-based foods, green leafies predominantly. Love your arugula and your bok choy and your romaine and any other spinach and the rest. Do not lead to calcification of heart arteries. In fact, they're anti-atherosclerosis. They're part of the solution. They're part of the prevention. But then you get this enormous industry driven by concerns about bone health and osteopenia and osteoporosis and fractured bones, where there's calcium supplements and there's low dose and high dose. And there have been a number of studies that suggest that if you're getting much close to 1,000 milligrams a day or over that of calcium oral supplements and vitamins, you may actually, these are association studies, but you may actually promote the calcification of your heart arteries. So in my clinic, if we have to supplement with calcium, which I don't often, it's going to be on the low side and it's going to be plant-based sources.
So a key is to get your calcium from plant sources and not overdo the supplements. All green veggies are great sources. In fact, dark green leafy vegetables are such outstanding sources of calcium that cooked kale has substantially more calcium per serving than milk does. This versatile leafy green also fights against heart disease, cancer, and inflammation. Eating a lot of veggies, and particularly the green ones, is a great way to take care of your blood vessels and your entire circulatory system.
Yes. You might find this hard to believe, but each of us actually has 50,000 50,000 miles of arteries coursing through our body and another 50,000 miles of veins. The blood vessels in your body cover a distance equal to nearly 4 times the circumference of the Earth.
That's an amazing thought. And it's critical that you have just the right amount of blood vessels, not too much and not too few. Your body is constantly creating new blood vessels and nurturing existing ones to ensure that it has all the nutrients it needs where they are needed. But it's also constantly cutting off blood flow to blood vessels and terminating them when they have fulfilled their purpose or if they are feeding cells that might have become cancerous.
Angiogenesis, angio, blood vessels, genesis is how they grow. This actually is the process by which our body grows blood vessels. It's also one of the hardwired defense systems in our body to ensure that the control of blood vessels, we don't have too many, we don't have too few, we have just the right amount to feed and nourish and oxygenate our cells and our organs. This is a really important concept to have just the right amount of blood vessels. Too few, and our organs die, like heart after a heart attack, or brain after a stroke, or erectile dysfunction. Nerves have a problem in diabetes and other conditions, but actually it's the blood vessels that feeding the nerves that are also damaged as well. Nerves need circulation. Without circulation, they begin to die or malfunction as well. What we've discovered in our lab are anti-angiogenic foods that can actually help, on one hand, mow down extra blood vessels in cancer, which is the other side of the equation. Cancers form all the time. You and I both have cancers right here, right now, growing in our body because it's natural. We have little mutations that happen as our cells divide. In fact, 10,000 mistakes occur in our DNA every 24 hours. And those form microscopic cancers, which will generally never harm us because they're not fed by a blood supply. So anti-angiogenic foods, and to give you some good examples, tomatoes, soy, brassica vegetables, nuts and legumes, strawberries, pomegranate, red grapes, Brussels sprouts. These are just some examples of foods that have anti-angiogenic capabilities. On the other hand, you can actually grow blood vessels when you need them as well. And this is where barley, fruit peel, mushrooms, all actually able to help us support the blood vessels we need. So what we're really aiming for when it comes to angiogenesis is not too many, not too few, but just the right amount. Our body's hardwired health defenses know how to do that. But what we eat can help our body do it much better.
Dr. Lee mentioned brassica vegetables, and I want to be sure you know what he's referring to. These particular veggies confer enormous benefits when it comes to the health of your cardiovascular system. The brassica veggies are those in the cabbage family, and they include bok choy and broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and all kinds of cabbages and cauliflower and collard greens, kale, kohlrabi and mustard greens, rutabagas and arugula, radishes, and turnips.
Those are some really great foods to help keep your heart and your blood vessels healthy. What are some of the other foods that are especially helpful?
There are so many heart-healthy foods, and they're all going to be found in the plant world over and over. What comes to mind, for example, is one of the senior researchers, happens to be vegan, Dr. David Jenkins, MD at University of Toronto, developed a dietary program 25 years ago, published in the Science, called the Portfolio Diet. I want to bring my cholesterol down and I want to use food. And he described in a research study, we're going to combine 4 food groups. We're going to get a lot of fiber in our diet, things like black beans, kidney beans, red beans. That's always a good choice. We're going to use a lot of oats. We're going to use soybean products like tofu, tempeh, and edamame, close to nature, maybe organic. And we're going to eat foods that provide what are called plant sterols, and particularly sunflower seeds and sesame seeds.
So when we're looking at dark green leafy vegetables rich in dietary nitrates, we're looking at Swiss chard, and we're looking at spinach and kale and mustard greens and collard greens and bok choy. These are extremely powerful. But I love beets. So a wide array of beets too as well are extremely important. Why? Because it's delivering that dietary nitrates that are there. Why that's important is they help to dilate the vessels too as well. So you're not only getting the fiber content that helps kind of wash away the cholesterol that's there, and you're eating cholesterol-free foods, that now you're also having foods that are enriching, plus a rich array of phytonutrients. So we're looking at those, we're looking at beans, superpower, right? It gives you protein, gives you resistant carbohydrates too as well. It's the stuff that blue zones are made of, that we understand the power of beans really in terms of our body from that resistant carbohydrate and the fiber rich.
Greens and beans are both fabulous sources of fiber, but a lot of supplements, such as Metamucil, provide fiber. Is it a good idea to use supplements to help meet your fiber needs?
It's important to say fiber from food, for sure, not fiber from supplements, because I have a lot of patients that say, oh, my diet is very high in fiber. I have the Metamucil right here. I'm like, no. That's not what we're talking about. The fiber certainly will help because fiber is only found in plant-based foods. When people eat more fiber, more plant-based foods, their gut microbiome is much better. TMAO levels go down, which is something that can actually contribute to heart disease risk, especially when they cut out the animal-based foods, when they're increasing their fiber. Does the fiber have a direct beneficial effect on anti-inflammatory or LDL? Maybe a little bit, but more, again, is thinking about the whole food. When you're eating fiber-rich food, you're eating whole plant foods, which come with all these phytonutrients, these anti-inflammatory, these nitrates, all these things that come with it. And so it's not always the fiber in the food, but the other things that come along with the fiber in those unprocessed plant-based foods that give the benefit. And similarly with beans, beans, good for your heart.
We hear a lot about the health-promoting value of exercise. And certainly exercise is super important for your heart health. But in the short term, if you don't have the right diet, exercise can also put strain on your heart. Dr. James Loomis is the former team internist for the St. Louis Rams football team and the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team. He explains how this works and what you can do about it.
When we perform exercise, we burn oxygen. And when we burn oxygen, it creates what's called oxidative stress. Now, a little bit of oxidative stress is good, right? So you go and you start exercising, the oxidative stress goes up, you send signal to your muscle, hey, I'm getting ready to damage you, so get ready to fix me, right? Now, the problem is too much oxidative stress can actually damage the muscles, and that's what causes the soreness. But what else does it damage? It can damage your DNA and increase your risk for cancer. It can damage the LDL cholesterol particles and increase risk for heart disease, right? And unfortunately, our bodies have a very limited ability to mitigate oxidative stress. The only way we can get extra antioxidant capacity is through our food. And the only place you find dietary antioxidants is in plants, because these antioxidants are actually those plants' natural defense mechanism. So they don't, like if you scar a tree, you don't want bugs and fungus and bacteria to get there. So we create, these plants create antioxidants to help that have this kind of healing property to help protect the plants. And so in general, the more color a plant has, the more antioxidant it is. So, when you're truly eating the rainbow every day, you just load up. It's like, you can think of it like if you've got a low-grade burning fire in your body every day because you eat a pro-inflammatory diet, right? You're eating too much saturated fat. And then you go exercise. What are you doing? You're throwing gas on the fire, right? Yeah. Well, now all of a sudden, when you bathe yourself in these anti-inflammatory milieu, right? The antioxidants, the low ratio of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids, which is also inflammatory. And now you go exercise, there's no fire to light.
Look at grains. That fiber-rich grains are extremely important. Having more color is extremely powerful. Red rice and bulgur and wheat and buckwheat and brown rice, all these things are extremely wonderful to the palate as you begin to eat it. Eating fruit, the berries are powerhouses. So blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, enrich in antioxidants. They help lower the blood pressure, improve the memory too as well, helping stave off diabetes. So we're seeing power in so many fronts as it relates to this heart-healthy diet that's focused on greens and beans, and accentuating that with the allium family, which includes onions and garlic because they decrease the stickiness of platelets, that are there, and adding mushrooms that are going to help with cancer too as well, adding seeds because we want antioxidants and omega-3s that are going to help with our memory and stave off Alzheimer's.
So I would say that fiber and whole grains help to bind cholesterol in the diet, which is always a plus, but they're also highly associated with good cardiovascular outcome. And the same is true for pulses or lentils or beans, whatever you want to call them. Americans do not eat pulses, lentils, or beans in general. Now, where I live in Colorado, we have a very large, either first or second generation Mexican population. We eat a little bit more beans than most other places, but by and large, these are superfoods that are super cheap, super great sources of protein, super great sources of carbohydrates that's complex, and yet often neglected by most people. And I would argue whole grains, when they're prepared well and they're fresh and they're amazing, but people don't realize that. You know, and I always just tell people that a great breakfast is a little cup of oatmeal made with water, not milk or butter like they do in some parts of the country, with berries on top. And it binds up cholesterol. It's good if you have loose stool. It's a win in every way.
We essentially have the cure for America's #1 killer. It's lifestyle. It's not a pill. It's not a drug or a stent or a bypass surgery. It's a lifestyle intervention.
I think what Dr. Loam just said is really important. We have the cure for the world's #1 killer. We know how to prevent and even how to reverse most cases of heart disease. But the answer isn't a pill or a procedure. The answer is lifestyle. And that starts with eating a whole foods, plant-strong diet. It can be a plant-exclusive diet or a plant-predominant diet. But in most cases, it needs to be rich not just in fruits and veggies, but also in beans and seeds and nuts and whole grains so that you can get the entire rainbow of nutrients that your body needs to thrive.
Yes. And a healthy lifestyle also includes getting enough exercise, not smoking, getting enough sleep, having healthy relationships, and managing your stress.
So true, so true. Those are all really important. When most of the physicians who are practicing today went to medical school, they learned nothing about eating healthy. And they also learned nothing about the importance of sleep, nothing at all. In fact, studies have found that while medical residents are on duty in the hospital, they get an average of only 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night. And it's common for residents to joke about self-medicating while they drink gallons of coffee just to stay awake.
Not only can this level of sleep deprivation produce intense fatigue and poor judgment, it can also create physicians who have no understanding of the crucial role that good sleep plays in keeping you healthy.
When I trained in medical school, which is actually more than 40 years ago, we had maybe 30 minutes on sleep and 20 minutes on nutrition. Now sleep is the big topic. If you want to keep your arteries healthy, you work on your sleep. If you want to avoid obesity and type 2 diabetes, you work on your sleep. If you want to avoid high blood pressure, you work on your sleep.
So it turns out the research suggests that 7 to 10 hours a night of uninterrupted sleep is the sweet spot for the least amount of heart disease. Now, it's hard to imagine because a lot of people are like, well, I get up every day at 3 o'clock in the morning and then 4 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning. These people are either stressed out or they have some sort of bladder or other problem that needs to be addressed. But you really want to get 7 hours a night, and a lot of people don't get that.
I find that I can do all right with 5 or 6 hours for a few nights, but then I need to catch up. Getting 7 hours a night might be challenging for some of us, but it's really important.
That's certainly true. Almost everyone knows that they feel better when they get enough sleep, but they might not realize how important sleep is for their health.
Yes, and pretty much everyone knows that smoking isn't healthy. But no discussion of health or cardiovascular disease would be complete without addressing this, because it's still a primary cause of preventable death for millions of people.
I think most people do know that smoking is bad for them. You know, that nicotine is as addictive as crack, in some cases more. It causes constriction, so it reduces blood flow to your skin, which makes you age, so you look 10 or 20 years older than you if you've been a heavy smoker, because the capillaries that supply blood to your skin begin to shrink. Your arteries in your heart, that's why smoking, people go, I get it why smoking causes lung cancer. Why does it cause heart disease? Because it causes the arteries in your heart to constrict, and that can cause a heart attack or chest pain or worse. It causes reduced blood flow to your sexual organs. So half of guys who smoke have erectile dysfunction, and 80% of guys when they're older who smoke have erectile dysfunction. So even though it's promoted as being so sexy, it really has the opposite effect.
Blood flow is important to every cell of your body. And when that blood flow is compromised, it can impair function in some critically important ways. In the following clip from the people who brought us the hit film Forks Over Knives, urologist Dr. Terry Mason explains one of the more personal ways that this affects our intimate lives.
The body is all connected.
If you have vascular disease anywhere, you have it everywhere. Erectile dysfunction is actually the first clinical indicator of generalized cardiovascular disease. It's the canary in the coal mine because inside the penis, you have the highest per cross-sectional area of endothelial cells. And endothelial cells are what are responsible for the initiation of increased blood flow to create an erection. And the diseases that damage the endothelial cells were diabetes, high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, and things of that nature.
When you start eating this typical Western diet and you've been slaughtering your endothelial cells, our blood flow, this is no longer like going over Teflon. It's like going over Velcro.
Guys associate being manly with eating meat. They exponentially want to show everybody how I am a man's man, I eat meat, and I'm a badass. But what they don't understand is that the first artery that goes on most males, the arteries to the penis, right? So these men that think they're so manly are also becoming impotent.
And women don't realize they have exactly the identical blood flow, same mechanism, except it's a lot smaller. You know, the clitoris is a miniature penis. It gets engorged with blood, with arousal. And if those arteries are blocked, nothing happens. It's your diet. It enhances sexual pleasure.
One of the most popular documentaries of all time is The Game Changers. And there's a scene in the Game Changers movie that was so impactful that most of the film crew changed to a plant-based diet after shooting it. A prominent urologist, Dr. Aaron Spitz, gave 3 elite college athletes a meat-based dinner. One of them got organic chicken, one got grass-fed beef, and the other got organic pork. The urologist then measured how many erections these athletes had and how hard and long-lasting their erections were while they slept that night. And then the next day, he gave them plant-based dinners and repeated the studies.
Take a look at the results. So Mason, I'm going to give you your results first. Let you take those out. Okay. The bigger the circumference, the harder the erection. And so you'll notice that that first circle, which is the meat meal, is not as big a circle, it's not as hard an erection as that second circle, the vegan meal. Now let's look at the second sheet. The second sheet is a accumulation of how many erections and for how long you had over the course of the night. So that first stubby graph is really, it's not the size of your penis.
I'm struggling.
It's not the size of your penis, it's how many minutes throughout the night you had erections.
Wow.
It turned out that these men averaged 300 to 500% more frequent erections during the night after a plant-based meal than after a meat-based meal. And these erections lasted on average 4 times longer, averaging 45 minutes compared to 11 minutes for the same men after eating the meat dinner.
All of this has real impact in the bedroom. But what's causing it? And why is food so significant?
When we talk about food for sexual function, we have to come back to the Nobel Prize award-winning nitric oxide topic. And there are foods that boost nitric oxide, and they're not the 65% of calories that Americans eat of processed junk food, whether they're through a carry-out window or they're picking up at the deli or wherever. They are, green leafies promote nitric oxide production, produce better sexual health. They are beets rich in nitrates that produce nitric oxide and enhance sexual health. They are fruits and vegetables overall, slowly chewed, enjoyed in a family setting and social setting that will produce more nitric oxide. So the ticket to heart health is the ticket to sexual health, is the ticket to excellent brain health, and it all comes from a colorful plant-based plate.
So when we are consuming less health-promoting diets, it can lead to plaques within our blood vessels. And just like those plaques can contribute to high blood pressure and heart disease and strokes, those plaques can also affect the blood vessels that go into the sexual organs and can affect the ability of arousal and sexual pleasure that way. And so when we eat more health-promoting foods, we're actually helping our blood flow.
Sexual health is important for many reasons. And it turns out that it is something of a positive feedback loop. When you have blood flowing to all the areas of your body, it also helps you to more fully enjoy intimate experiences, which in turn has a whole host of benefits to your well-being.
So when it comes to sexual health, and I love this too because it's so not talked about, but there are some tremendous benefits. So one is just having that intimate experience is actually so helpful for our mental health. So, if you think about even just hugging, hugging that person that you love, it tends to boost those happy hormones in our brain. And it actually helps to be health promoting from that aspect. And so sexual intimacy is definitely very important. And on the other side of sexual intimacy, we actually see when that's impacted, it actually can lead to health conditions. So we know about male impotence. When they're having those issues, that can be a sign of heart disease because you need blood flow for that to occur. And so, sexual health is so important for boosting our mental health, but it's also a sign of our physical health too.
It's the emotional joy. It's the maybe hormone release, the oxytocin, the endorphins. It's the fact that you have to have pretty good cardiovascular status and you have to have good plumbing to be successful in the sexual world. And it's the same approach to preventing heart attacks and keeping those youthful flexible arteries in the heart are going to encourage youthful flexible arteries in the sexual department. There are data that of all the foods on the planet, eating fruit is most associated with maintaining good sexual health long term. So that apple that Eve picked and gave to Adam was the first relationship where a fruit mattered in a sexual relationship, and it still, according to good studies, is important too.
There is in Western medicine a great deal of concern about risk factors like high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, smoking, and obesity, and deservedly so, because these are very often linked to serious disease. But an ever-increasing body of medical research is coming to the perhaps surprising conclusion that the quality of your relationships with other people is as important to your health as are these other indicators, which is why chronic loneliness now ranks as one of the most lethal risk factors determining who will die prematurely in modern industrialized nations.
Western medicine has an almost surreal ability to ignore emotional realities. I'm thinking about birthing practices that routinely separate mothers from their newborns. For example, putting them in nurseries rather than in their mother's arms. But sophisticated research has confirmed that we are social creatures to our core. Our sense of being in touch with others and feeling connected to them has enormous implications for our health and for our longevity.
Here's an example of this research. Researchers from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland studied 10,000 married men. They found that those men who had elevated cholesterol, high blood pressure, and diabetes were more than 20 times as likely to develop angina during the next 5 years. But they were amazed to discover that those men who answered yes to the simple question, "Does your wife show you her love?" developed far less angina even when they had high levels of these risk factors.
The medical importance of intimacy and of having loving relationships with a spouse or a dear friend became overwhelmingly apparent to another set of researchers. They published their fascinating study in the British Medical Journal. For 7 years, the researchers followed 752 men. At the start of the study, these men had been given a medical exam during which they were asked about their emotional stress. The researchers asked these men if they were experiencing financial troubles, feeling insecure at work, defending a legal action, going through a divorce, or facing another enormously stressful challenge. They found that the men who were had more than triple the risk of dying during the 7 years following the initial exam. Being under these kinds of stresses at the beginning of the study turned out to be a stronger indicator of death within the ensuing 7 years than biomarkers like high blood pressure, high concentrations of blood triglycerides, or high cholesterol levels.
Okay, so serious stress breaks people down and can even kill them. That's really no surprise. But what does that have to do with loving connections?
Well, I think what made this study so remarkable was that for those men who said at the start of the study that they had a dependable web of intimacy, a spouse or close friends, there turned out to be no correlation whatsoever between high stress levels and death rate.
That is so powerful. I think the take-home message from studies like these is that loving connections and relationships have an extraordinary ability to diffuse the negative medical effects of stress.
And we have some understanding of the mechanism by which this happens. Certain hormones, including cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline, are produced in your body when you're under stress. When these chemicals are secreted and are surging through your body, your immune cells are less able to perform their functions, and this can leave you more susceptible to disease. In this way, stress suppresses immune resistance.
There may be an evolutionary wisdom operating in this suppression in that energy is conserved, enabling your body to put a priority on handling an immediate emergency. In extreme instances, this could make the difference between life and death.
Absolutely. But if stress continues over time, your health inevitably suffers. Social support seems to neutralize the effects of stress by lowering the production of these stress hormones.
Modern research is now repeatedly finding something you might find surprising, namely that your connections with the significant people in your life, if those connections are positive and loving, can prevent stress-induced illness. In fact, they contribute greatly to your health and can add many years to your life.
It's a striking fact that mortality rates for all causes of death are consistently higher for divorced, single, and widowed people of all sexes and all ages. And this is why life insurance companies use people's marital status as one of the indicators for how long they project someone is likely to live.
But there certainly are toxic relationships that don't provide these health benefits. While good, intimate relationships are deeply supportive of health, it's also true that bad ones can cause considerable damage. Sometimes people's hearts ache with loneliness, even in the company of their spouse.
Yes. In an article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, our research team found that marital discord dramatically increases the risk of cardiac death in women. The study found that women tripled their risk of recurrent heart trouble if they were involved in a stressful relationship. And this finding held even after researchers specifically factored out variables including age, exercise, estrogen status, smoking, cholesterol levels, education, and lots of other factors that might have otherwise altered the outcome of the study.
So, what is it about unhappy relationships and about loneliness that so undermines our health?
I wrote a book back in 1998 called Love and Survival that reviewed what were then hundreds, which are now tens of thousands of studies showing that when you're lonely and depressed, you're 3 to 10 times more likely to get sick and die prematurely than those who have a sense of love and connection and community. Loneliness is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day, to put it in context. Yeah. And so when people realize that these social isolation isn't just lonely, but it actually is affecting our health probably more than any other factor, both directly and indirectly through the behaviors that we make, then we can make different choices. That we can say, oh, the time that I spend with my friends and family is not a luxury that I do after I've done all the important stuff.
It turns out that people who have the most love and support actually have the best cardiovascular outcomes.
The human heart, the pump beating in your chest, doesn't actually look very much like a Valentine heart. But there is a definite connection between the quality of love in your life and the health of your physical heart.
Of course, among the most important relationships of our lives are those with our parents. It's widely recognized that the way children are treated by their parents can have a huge impact on whether they become confident, joyful, and responsible people or grow up feeling insecure and frightened and dysfunctional. But we now also have a tremendous amount of research showing that how parents treat their children has real medical implications.
Yes, in fact, there was a truly remarkable long-term study conducted at Harvard University. It began in the early 1950s when researchers randomly chose 125 undergraduate students and asked them to rank their relationships with each of their parents on a 4-point scale as to the degree of their emotional closeness. The students checked a box indicating whether their relationship with their mother and then their father was either very close, or warm and friendly, or tolerant, or strained and cold.
Okay, so now I'm curious. What did they do with that data?
Well, 35 years later, the researchers examined the medical histories of these volunteers and found that an astounding 91% of those who had rated their relationship with their mothers as either tolerant or strained and cold had, by the time they reached their late 50s, suffered serious medical crises. They had more than twice the risk of having serious diagnosed disease by that time compared to those who, 35 years before, had said that they had either a very close or a warm and friendly relationship with their mothers. And similarly, 82% of participants who had rated their relationships with their fathers as either tolerant or strained and cold had developed serious diseases by midlife. And even more telling, 100% of those who had reported that their relationships with both their parents were strained and cold had experienced serious medical problems by their late 50s.
Wow. These numbers are staggering. The researchers actually concluded that having had a difficult relationship with one's parents is as great a risk factor for major adult disease as smoking, obesity, and high blood pressure combined. Which is all the more reason, if you've had a difficult relationship with one or both of your parents, to do everything you can now to heal the damage you've experienced and to apply the food and lifestyle principles that we're talking about in this summit.
Yes, no matter where you come from or what you've been through, it's never too late to care more deeply for yourself and to invest in building a more loving and connected and healthy life.
Dr. Dean Ornish was the first clinician to offer documented proof that heart disease can not only be halted, but actually reversed by changing your diet and lifestyle. Participants in Dr. Ornish's programs do 4 key things. First, they eat a whole food, plant-strong diet. Second, they exercise appropriate to their level of fitness. Third, they learn how to better manage their stress. And fourthly, and very importantly, they connect with each other and talk about their problems and issues in a constructive way. Put very simply, the cornerstones are eat better, move more, stress less, and love more.
And this program has shown outstanding results. Participants have discontinued medications, they've lowered their blood pressure without drugs, their chest pain has disappeared, they feel more energetic and happy and calm, they lose weight while eating more, and blockages in their coronary arteries are greatly reduced.
Over the years, Dr. Ornish has published a long series of peer-reviewed studies in the most prestigious medical journals demonstrating that most of the patients who follow his program are able to not just arrest, but actually reverse heart disease without surgery.
Patients in his programs typically see their angina decrease by more than 90% in the first few weeks. Blood flow to their heart improves in only a few weeks. After a year, even severely blocked coronary arteries become measurably less blocked. And after 5 years, there is even more reversal.
What makes all of this even more amazing is that heart patients who painstakingly follow the American Heart Association guidelines do not achieve anything remotely equivalent to these benefits. And that's one of the reasons that the Ornish diet has been ranked #1 for heart health by US News and World Report more than 10 times.
In 1977, 46 years ago, when I was a second-year medical student, I got interested in the whole idea of can lifestyle changes actually reverse heart disease? And at the time, I was learning how to do bypass surgery with Dr. Michael DeBakey, the heart surgeon who pretty much invented the operation. And, we'd cut people open, we'd bypass their clogged arteries, he'd tell them they were cured. And more often than not, they'd go home and do all the things that had caused the problem in the first place, eat junk food and smoke cigarettes and not manage stress, not exercise and be in unhappy relationships. And more often than not, the new bypasses would clog up and we'd cut them open again, sometimes multiple times. So for me, bypass surgery became a metaphor for an incomplete approach. We were literally bypassing the problem without also treating the underlying cause. And I wondered what would happen if we treated the cause and what were the causes. And so I went to these places that they had then called libraries, and they had these things called books, with real paper and journals and so on. And I got kind of obsessed by it because I found that in animals and dogs and cats and pigs and rabbits and monkeys, you could cause them to get heart disease if you put them on a typical American diet or made them smoke or didn't let them exercise or put them in isolation. But you could reverse it if you changed all those things. And so I thought, why should people be any different? And everybody said, oh no, people just are. At that time it was thought, once you had heart disease, the best you could do would be to slow down the rate at which you got worse, and that was all you could hope for.
Fortunately, we know better than that now. In time, the Ornish program would become the first lifestyle medicine program to be covered by Medicare and by the big insurance companies. And as powerful and as effective as the Ornish program is at preventing and even reversing heart disease, it's also been shown to be remarkably effective against many other forms of illness too.
Yes, it has. Do you remember Dr. Stephen Loam? He's the cardiologist who was running in the 2022 Monterey Bay Half Marathon and ended up saving not one but two runners' lives. And he then helped both of them to adopt a whole food, plant-powered diet. Well, it turns out that Dr. Loam hasn't always been as health conscious as he is today. In fact, the story of his and his family's healing journey is remarkable.
I was standard American diet from the day I was born with my whole family, and obesity ended up running in my family, although of course it relates to the food and lifestyle, not just the pure genetics. And my sister was 450 pounds. My parents reached 300 pounds each, were diabetic, and I reached 270. And eventually I did start to accumulate obesity-related diseases. And it really didn't hit me, just like most Americans, I had blinders on. I was eating what my culture said to eat, what tasted good, what was cheap and convenient. And it didn't hit me for a while, even throughout my medical training, because when I was trained at a big university in Chicago to be a cardiologist, food wasn't a part of the curriculum whatsoever. I learned essentially nothing about nutrition. So yeah, it hit me real hard from two angles, almost simultaneously. Back in 2014, I had been a cardiologist for about 4 years, and the obesity-related ailments just really started hitting me hard, and it coincided just absolutely perfectly with my frustrations practicing cardiology, pushing medication, which I quickly realized, patients don't like the medications, they cost money, they have side effects, and even if I prescribe them all the perfect medications according to our guidelines, they might not even take them. And they might still have a heart attack or stroke because the medicines weren't treating the cause of the underlying problem. And I was just thinking, I don't know if I can practice this type of cardiology for the rest of my career. It just wasn't very rewarding. And that's when the lifestyle medicine revelation hit, and it changed both my personal life dramatically, the life of my professional life and the way I practice medicine and the lives of my family. But then after randomly Netflix said, watch Forks Over Knives, that's when the proper journey began. And I was able to lose all the weight, get down to my ideal body weight. My cholesterol numbers dropped dramatically. They were as high as 135, and my LDL dropped down to 47 without medications, which is insane. If I had my patients' LDLs down to 47, they would never need me, which would be great. Obviously, that's the goal. And it was just more energy. I slept better. Chronic back pain went away, which was debilitating. The acid reflux I had went away. My mental clarity was so much better. And then that mental clarity went straight to my clinical practice, where I finally understood the main root cause of my patients' problems and how to best treat it. And so, yeah, obesity ran in my family. My sister did end up getting a weight loss surgery. She lost 300 pounds, but now she is nearly 100% whole food, plant-based. My mother, who was 300 pounds and diabetic, and she changed completely, whole food, plant-based, lost more than 100 pounds, reversed her diabetes, got off her medications. And then my father, too, was right at the same time my dad, who was almost 300 pounds, actually over 300 pounds and type 2 diabetic, on a lot of medications. He had hip replacement surgery, and his hip was better, but then his knee gave out on him, and he just did not like surgery and doctors, even though his son is a doctor. And he said, no, I'm not getting knee replacement surgery. And he was confined to a wheelchair. And I said, Dad, you have two choices. You sit in that wheelchair for the rest of your life, and you keep taking all these pills until you finally have your heart attack or stroke, and that's it. And you're not going to really enjoy life that much. You'll be in the hospital a lot, it won't be good, or you change your diet and your lifestyle and you fight through this. And oh my, he went 100% whole food, plant-based, oil-free, low fat, lost more than 100 pounds, got off all his medications, and now his knee doesn't hurt him at all. And he walks more than 3 miles a day without ever having his knee replacement done and taking no medication for his knee pain. And so it's been amazing. My wife is super supportive. She's a family medicine physician, went 100% on the plant-based journey with me and all 6 of our kids following 100% plant-based as well. Yeah.
It's enough to make you think this stuff actually works.
It does. It works. It's amazing.
Yes, this stuff does work.
In the next episode, we'll be focusing on diabetes and weight loss, and on what you can do to bring your body weight into alignment with your highest health potential.
Thank you so much for joining us. We wish you a happy and healthy and loving heart.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Let's do this. At Food Revolution Network, our mission is healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for everyone who eats. We want kids to learn about healthy food in school. We want doctors to learn how nutrition impacts health in medical school. We want the routine use of antibiotics banned from factory farms. We want a world where everyone, regardless of their ethnic or economic background, has knowledge of and access to healthy food for their family. We want a world in which heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, and diabetes are rare, and in which vibrant health is the status quo. We're spreading the word and standing for change. And with every empowerment package purchased, we make a donation to Trees for the Future, enabling them to plant an organic fruit or nut tree in a low-income community. Join this movement and support this mission. Oh my goodness, what a powerful episode. And so many incredible comments coming in to express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying. Post and engage in the comment section on the broadcast page. You can, of course, refresh the comments using the button that's down at the bottom there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Rima said, incredibly informative. I love this series. Rima, thank you. We're so glad you're here. Ruby said, thank you for this amazing summit. I've tried to eat healthy for many years. However, I was far too concerned with fat intake back in the no fat craze years ago. I was an avid runner all my life and last year had a hip replacement that left me with significant nerve pain. Lowering inflammation and cold water therapy and ice packs has helped. However, I am dealing with considerable nerve pain. Sadly, far more pain than previous to my hip being replaced. I'm looking forward to learning more about how to add more foods that are anti-inflammatory. I do use turmeric daily and drink turmeric-based tea. I also am concerned about bone health. Ruby, thank you so much for sharing, and I'm so sorry that you're in ongoing pain. Nerve pain can just be so debilitating. I do have a few thoughts to share in case they're helpful. First of all, great that you're using turmeric. It can be really helpful as an anti-inflammatory. But just taking turmeric won't do a lot of good if you aren't able to absorb the curcumin in it. So bioavailability goes up dramatically when you take turmeric along with some black pepper and also when you combine it with some source of fat. You may already know this, but I wanted to make sure you do. And you may want to consider, if you don't already know about it, a product called Curcumin Gold, which is made by Purality Health. Curcumin Gold uses micelles and liposomes to increase the bioavailability of the curcuminoids by about 185-fold. And they also add in DHA and ginger oil, both of which are potent anti-inflammatories. I know a lot of people who have found value from this, and given what you're dealing with, you really may want to try it if you haven't already. You can learn more about turmeric and also find a link to Curcumin Gold if you go to foodrevolution.org and type turmeric in the search bar. Or I'll go ahead and give you a URL here for getting it for a Food Revolution Network member discount price if you are interested. It is turmeric, the number 4 health.com. Again, that's turmeric4health.com. Maybe that will be helpful. In terms of nutrition and nerve pain, we know that people with neuropathy should be wary of highly processed foods. You want to steer clear also of added sugars, and you may want to try going off dairy and gluten and avoiding excessive alcohol consumption, because all of these things, processed foods, added sugars, dairy, gluten, and alcohol, could exacerbate neuropathy symptoms by inducing inflammation and also by spiking blood sugar levels. And everything else we're learning here also holds true. I hope and pray that you're able to get some benefit and some relief and some peace, and then you can enjoy many more healthy years to come. Maxine said, just had to come on today to say a big thank you to Ocean for the wonderful gift you have given me. So much information I can absorb in my own time. Maxine was a recipient of an empowerment package gift yesterday, and Maxine, I'm just so happy that that you're able to put this to good use. I know you will, and we're so glad to invest in your health and support you with the empowerment package. Congratulations again. Nancy said, does changing to plant-based eating also affect enlarged prostate? Nancy, thank you for asking. A few people have actually asked about this today. So yes, switching to a plant-based diet can have positive effects on an enlarged prostate, which is also known as benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH. Plant foods are rich sources of antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds, which can bring down inflammation, and inflammation is a key factor in prostate health. Studies have shown that men who eat more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains tend to have lower risk of developing BPH. And as well, a plant-based diet's typically lower in saturated fats and higher in fiber, both of which can support better hormonal balance, which also benefits prostate health. Researchers will definitely tell us that more research is needed, but it seems pretty clear that a whole foods plant-based diet can help manage and may even improve symptoms of an enlarged prostate. So I hope that's helpful for you and your family. Deborah said, I developed varicose veins in my legs during pregnancy 20 years ago. I'm a teacher, so I am on my feet all day. My doctor recently suggested a procedure where she would inject a glue-like substance into the veins, which would get rid of the varicose veins. I refused the procedure. I'm not putting that in my body. Can a whole foods plant-based diet help with varicose veins? Well, Deborah, thanks for asking, and thank you for being a teacher. Love the teachers of this world. What beautiful work you do. And I'm sorry that you're suffering with this. So a whole foods plant-based diet can support vein health and potentially help reduce the risk or progression of varicose veins. The rationale here is that plant-based diets are rich in antioxidants and fiber and anti-inflammatory compounds, which improve circulation and strengthen blood vessels. Fruits and vegetables that are high in vitamin C are particularly helpful, like berries and citrus, because they support collagen production, which is key for maintaining strength and elasticity in vein walls. And as we will see in tomorrow's episode, a whole foods plant-based diet can help with weight management, which reduces the strain on veins and minimizes the risk of developing varicose veins. We don't know for sure if diet alone can completely reverse existing varicose veins or if it will do so on a consistent basis, but it seems pretty clear that it can be helpful with prevention and symptom management and potentially with reversal as well. I would love to hear if you experiment with this, what kind of results you get, and if you would be willing to come on back next year's summit and give us an update, I would love to hear it. Mark said, I love watching all your videos. I'm currently living in the country of Panama, but at the moment I'm in Southwest Florida. I've been trying to eat whole, natural foods as much as possible. I've eliminated ultra-processed foods near 100%. I eat chia, hemp, flax seeds almost daily, and mushrooms and nuts and fruits and vegetables and more. Mark, sounds great. Mark says, my one weakness is I love a beer or two in the evenings. I have to wonder, does the beer negate much of the good eating I'm doing? Well, Mark, thanks for asking. Sounds like you're doing some great stuff and your body is going to thank you for the rest of your life. Beer, there's no research out there that I've seen linking beer to any positive health benefits. And there is certainly some research, quite a bit of it, showing that alcohol increases inflammation in the body, increases risk of cancer and other health detriments. Of course, it can help people feel more socially connected, and we know love is good. But on the whole, on balance, alcohol is not the friend to your longevity and health. That said, I always say don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. If you're doing 10 great things and one not so great thing, that one not so great thing is going to count against you, but not as much as the great things are. Your body can handle a certain amount of abuse or toxicity and be resilient when it's got the foundations in place with a healthy diet and lifestyle. That said, if you can take that next step, it may be beneficial. I wonder if you've considered non-alcoholic beers, if you just like the taste and the bubbles and the experience of a nice beverage. You could also try other beverages, try carbonated water, consider maybe a kombucha, lots of different things to consider. And at the end of the day, I support you in living a healthy, vibrant life and enjoying your life. And, so it's up to you how you want to handle this. We are loving you and blessing you and supporting you in every step of the way. And I'm so excited to hear of all the great steps you've been taking. Lisa said, are some of these sessions repeats from previous years? Lisa, thanks for asking. So every single year we produce a completely brand new Food Revolution Summit with all new interviews and content, 100%. This year, the 2024 Food Revolution Summit was premiered in April, and we are now rebroadcasting those same episodes for 8 days during this fall, September, fall in the Northern Hemisphere, relaunch of the summit, along with, as you can see here, all new daily live broadcasts from me before and after each episode. So some of you may have been a part of the April launch and may be getting a chance to see it again with all the new broadcast content. Many of you were not and are seeing this for the first time. All of this is new for 2024. I hope that helps. V said, I'm wondering if, when doctors have proven that heart disease is reversible, is it the hardened calcifications or the soft plaques that are reversible, or both? Well, V, thank you for asking. A number of people have been asking about this. It's a somewhat controversial topic. The official medical opinion on it is that hardened calcifications are not reversible, although their buildup can be slowed or halted with diet and lifestyle. But we do know that diet and lifestyle changes can help shrink and stabilize plaque, or as you're calling it, soft plaques. And if you do have hardened calcifications in your arteries, it is even more important and urgent to put what we're learning here into action in your life. Because diet and lifestyle can bring down blood pressure, can bring down LDL cholesterol levels, can actually help to melt the soft plaques, they can make a world of difference for your health. And you want to keep that calcification from building up or extending any further if you have some. So again, diet and lifestyle are absolutely critical here. And at the end of the day, more important than any single test result or data point is longevity and life expectancy. And are you going to die of cardiovascular disease or not? And on this, the data is overwhelming. When people adopt a whole foods plant-based diet, they consistently move in the right direction, often dramatically so. 80%, 90% of the time, we see slowing of progression, if not outright reversal. So this is huge and powerful. And the less healthy you are, and the more you're struggling with any cardiovascular issues, the more urgent and important it is to take charge and do all that you can. Lil said, "This episode has been wonderful. I'm looking forward to the remainder of this summit. In the past, I've purchased the empowerment packages. I wasn't able to do that this year and wasn't able to watch this year during the initial summit broadcast in April, so I'm very happy I can at least partake now." Lil, thank you for being here, and thank you for investing in your health and our work with past purchases of empowerment packages in prior years. And we're so glad you're back and you're able to join us live, and we want to make it easier for you to participate fully and to have this entire summit available to you throughout the year, anytime or place you want. So we're going to gift you with the 2024 Food Revolution Summit Empowerment Package. Our team will be in touch with you. Congratulations. I know you'll put it to wonderful use. Claire said, "What about oxalates and lectins in plant foods? I worry about getting too much of them." Well, Claire, thank you for asking. Let's address each of these in sequence. So let's talk about lectins first. Lectins are a kind of protein found in many plant foods and also in legumes. Now, a few popular health influencers, one in particular, have done a lot to popularize the belief that lectins are dangerous to human health. They tell us they're the #1 biggest danger in the American diet. They warn against grains of all kinds, beans particularly, nuts, and certain fruits and vegetables, including eggplant, tomatoes, potatoes, and peppers. And they're telling us that these are the reason why so many of us are sick today. Now, I'm sorry, folks, but this stuff just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. We have an abundance of medical studies that link whole grains, legumes, nuts, and tomatoes with positive health outcomes. People living longer, reversing disease, feeling better, getting less cancer, getting less heart disease. So we are faced today with an epidemic rate of diseases that many experts believe are clearly linked to an abundance of low nutrient, low fiber, sugar enhanced, heavily processed, and meat centered foods. I don't think it helps to blame our health problems on legumes and grains and a bunch of fruits and vegetables. Of course, we're all unique, and almost every food has someone who is allergic to it or sensitive to it. And that includes the nightshade vegetables, that includes all the people who are sensitive to different kinds of lectins. But for the vast majority of us, this is not where I think we should be putting our attention. Now, to be fair, there are some lectins in certain raw legumes that can be toxic. So do make sure to cook your beans well, and really they should ideally be pressure cooked. Bonus points if you soak them overnight or even start them sprouting for a couple of days before you cook them. But other than that, I don't think that these folks are pointing in the right direction or that we need to worry about lectins very much. For more on the topic, you can go to foodrevolution.org and search for the word lectins and find an article we wrote about it. Now, oxalates are salts that form from oxalic acid, which is a naturally occurring organic acid that's found in plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi. Some of the oxalates that are in our bodies come from eating plant foods that contain them. Now, our bodies actually make a lot of the oxalates in our bodies as well. Some of the foods that are highest in oxalates are going to be Swiss chard, spinach, rhubarb, and also to a lesser extent tofu and peanuts and beets and almonds. Despite their high oxalate content, these foods that I just named are some of the healthiest foods on the planet. And the consumption of most, if not all of them, is linked with longer life expectancy. So the biggest real concern, honestly, with oxalates is kidney stones. There are 4 basic kinds of kidney stones, and only one of them, calcium oxalate kidney stones, seems to be linked to oxalate consumption. Calcium oxalate kidney stones are formed when calcium in your urine combines with oxalates, and low oxalate diets could be beneficial in this case. So if you suffer from calcium oxalate kidney stones, you may want to eat less than 100 milligrams of oxalic acid per day, which would mean no spinach or beet greens or Swiss chard or rhubarb, because those are foods that contain the most. However, if you don't, then it's probably not a particular point of concern. Now, that said, oxalates can also reduce absorption rates for some nutrients. And this means that spinach and beet greens and Swiss chard in particular, because they are so high in oxalic acid, even though they are nutritional superstars, you may not get all the nutrition absorbed into your body when you eat them. They are still good for you folks, but maybe not optimal. So maybe for your leafy greens, lean into kale and cabbage and some of the other, collards and mustard greens and some of the other greens that aren't as high in oxalates. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is a major point of concern. To learn more, go to foodrevolution.org and type oxalates in the search bar, and you can see our article on this. Janet said, I watched this series early this year. I desperately needed it after being diagnosed with ASHD through a heart cath and incidentally finding out I have a stiff left ventricle. I have been plant-based ever since. There is so much confusing information out there. It can be overwhelming. Thank you so much for playing this again. Looking forward to 2025's revolution. Hugs. Well, hugs back to you, Janet. I'm sorry that you're dealing with these challenges, and we're sending you lots of love on the journey, and I'm so glad that you're putting what you're learning into action. And yes, we're looking forward to our 2025 Food Revolution Summit already. Believe it or not, we're already in production on that, and that'll be coming out in April. Cannot wait. Francis said, hello from Brazil. I bought the empowerment package yesterday, and I must say I'm so glad I did. Having this information for life is pure gold. Thank you for what you do, Ocean John and the FRN staff. Well, hello to you, Francis, and hello to Brazil. We're so glad you are with us, and thank you so much for investing in the empowerment package so you can have all this for life. By the way, folks, I want to make sure everyone realizes that the empowerment package, of course, it gives you the episodes, which alone is worth it. But you also get the extended interviews. So there are 45 full-length interviews that went into this summit. Some of you are going to want to watch all of them, and that's highly recommended. Other folks are going to want to watch specific ones that deal with specific issues you're dealing with. So if you're dealing with cardiovascular health, wouldn't you like to hear the full conversation with some of the top plant-based cardiologists on the planet? If you're dealing with diabetes or excess weight, or if you're dealing with gut health considerations, or you're dealing with any of the other issues we're addressing in this summit, then you can go deep into that topic with some of the top experts on the planet. And the empowerment package also gives you audio versions, which means you can listen while you're driving without having to watch anything, or while you're gardening, or while you're doing dishes, and be absorbing this powerful, life-changing information in a really, really deep way. And so that's just a resource that I'm so happy we get to share. And Francis, I'm so glad that you're taking advantage of it. Christina said, I'm so grateful to you and your father, and I do know what you mean about feeling against the tide in wanting to change my diet to a healthier direction. I felt the same way when I decided I didn't need to have alcohol as part of social gatherings. I'm comfortable with my choices, but I have so much to learn and want to get the empowerment package, so I need to learn how to do that. Thank you and your father for this huge gift of learning for us. Christy, thank you so much for writing and engaging. Yes, it can be easy to feel like you're going upstream when we live in a toxic food culture that keeps pushing us in the wrong direction. And I hope you can feel the power and the support of this community backing you, standing with you, working with you. There's more than 100,000 people in this summit right now, more than 400,000 people between this and the spring launch combined. And we are all with you, supporting you and cheering you on every time you make healthier choices. If you're interested in getting the empowerment package, you can do so. There's a link from the broadcast page and also in lots of emails that we send you. And I'm sure you'll put it to great use. A said, I too have so much to learn. Also, it's difficult for me when my housemate is constantly bringing downright bad food into the house. Sometimes I'm strong, most times not. Got to get on track and stay on track. Yes, it can be really challenging when you have housemates or family members who eat differently to stay on track. And a few tips on this. One is, if you know what your bright lines are, you stick to them all the time. Sometimes when you find yourself struggling to stay with it, you need those bright lines. You need those sharp boundaries. Otherwise, the addictive pull gets too strong. Think of it like water flowing in a gully. If it's got a clear path, it'll keep going there, and the gully gets deeper and deeper, and over time it becomes a creek, eventually maybe a riverbed. But if it flows all over the place, then it'll form new grooves. So if you've got grooves that are in a certain way, you've got to have a very clear etched direction, and you've got to keep the water going there so it stays in the right path. So one thing that can help is having segmentation, like this is your shelf, this is my shelf, this is a shared shelf in the fridge. In the cupboards, having different cupboards or different areas, label them. Don't touch your housemate's stuff. Eat your stuff. If you want to make shared fridge, tell them what you do and don't eat so they can remember, and if they want to make food for you, they know what to include or exclude. Those are just some tips. You can also, if you're in a family that eats different foods, you can often mix and match, make a vegan base, for example, or a whole foods base, and then have some things on the side for the people who want other things. They can add it later, right? Or add it separately, or, cook one stew and then make a separate pot, and then they can add some other stuff to their separate pot. There's a lot of tricks that can help people coexist in an amicable and friendly way. In our family, sometimes we've done a potluck style Thanksgiving where different people bring different things and they share and eat what they like. And then there's sort of room for everybody. But if you're having trouble with just straight up being exposed to foods that you don't want to be eating, but you feel like you can't stop yourself when they're around you, then you may want to go a bit deeper with your boundaries and your bright lines. And you're going to learn about this tomorrow. We're going to be looking at food freedom tomorrow, at how you can be the author of your food life and link that into obesity and diabetes, because all of these things are deeply connected. So stay tuned for tomorrow's episode as well. Abby said, are fermented foods beneficial when your gut microbiome is optimized, or would it not even matter at that point because your diet's optimal and giving your gut everything it needs? Is it only beneficial to help certain conditions to strengthen a specific strain of bacteria alongside the proper diet? Well, thank you for your question, Abby. Even with an optimal diet and a well-balanced gut microbiome, fermented foods can offer real benefits. They help maintain your balance, and they provide support against potential disruptions like bacterial infections or stress or dietary changes that occur from week to week. They're especially good for digestion, and they support healthy immune function, and they even enhance mood, all of which may be easier to maintain with a diet that's rich in fermented foods. A nutritious diet lays the groundwork and incorporates all of the foundations that you need so that you can thrive. And then you want to keep feeding the good guys and bringing in more of the good guys, because it just makes more of a good thing. So, as we explored in episode 3, the overall benefits of probiotic supplements might not be what they were once thought to be. They may be helpful in specific short-term situations, but emphasizing a diverse plant-based diet that includes some probiotic-rich and fermented foods is a more sustainable way to restore and maintain healthy gut bacteria without overpopulating specific microorganisms. And then your body will kind of do its thing and tend in its own miraculous way to nurture more of what it needs. Bacteria work in exquisite concert with us. When we give them the right food, they repay the debt by constantly nourishing us in good ways. So in summary, even if your diet's already optimal, adding fermented foods rich in probiotics regularly can offer additional support and help you to cultivate a healthy gut for long-term health and vitality. Taking specific probiotic supplements could be helpful in certain specific situations, but Dr. Alan Desmond, who we interviewed extensively in episode 3, says that he almost never prescribes probiotics for his patients. There are very rare exceptions. There are specific strains that can be beneficial for certain conditions, but they're rare, and you would want to work with a specialist who really understands those distinctions and not just pop a probiotic pill from the health food store. Hope that's helpful to you. Danny said, my mom introduced me to FRN earlier this year, and I began transitioning to a whole foods plant-based diet this May. I've been disabled for almost 5 years now, and I'm finding that Western medicine has really hit a wall with my care. Changing my diet has helped me remove some medications that were causing more harm than help, and I'm looking forward to seeing what improvements I can make going forward. Due to my very low income and limited energy, I haven't been able to optimize my diet the way I'd like to. I'm hoping to save enough to purchase the empowerment package by next summer and maybe even become a coach. Keep up the great work. Danny, thank you so much for being here. We're so glad you're on this journey. I'm sorry that you've been struggling in all these ways, and how wonderful that you're on the path towards reclaiming your health with healthy diet. We want to support you. We want to make it a little easier for you. I appreciate that you're wanting to save up to purchase an empowerment package next year, and maybe you will, but we don't want you to have to wait. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package today. Our team will be in touch with you. Congratulations. You will now own all of the summit recordings, the episodes, and the transcripts for life. You'll also have all the extended interviews. You can keep listening, learning, and engaging. You'll also have more than $1,000 worth of bonuses, some of which could be extremely helpful to you as well. So congratulations. I know you'll love this. And by the way, there's a lot of wonderful ways to save money while eating a whole foods plant-based diet. You want to base your diet around things like whole grains and legumes, include vegetables that are affordable and accessible, like cabbage and carrots and onions, and maybe some frozen vegetables and fruits as well. Work with what's in season, grow sprouts, maybe grow a garden. There are many steps you can take that are affordable and also incredibly nourishing. We are supporting you every step of the way, and I know you'll put the empowerment package to good use, and I cannot wait to hear your report on how your health is evolving as you continue on this journey. Stay in touch, please. And congratulations. And congratulations also, and huge thank you to all of our newest empowerment package owners, including Gail from Minnesota, Oksana from North Carolina, Nyenya from UK, Julie from Wisconsin, Carol from Arizona, Clyde from Australia, Patrick from Washington, Rhonda from Oklahoma, Anne from Canada, Zuzana from Slovakia, Debbie from New Zealand, Christopher from Papua New Guinea, and everyone else who's stepping up and getting informed and owning it for life. We thank you for investing in your health and for supporting our mission with your empowerment package purchase. Now, folks, today we have, as every day of the summit, 3 more extended interviews with our brilliant team of experts. And if you're interested in heart health and cardiovascular health, then you're going to love what we've got on tap for you today. We have Andrew Freeman, MD, on taking charge of your heart, how to prevent and halt cardiovascular disease progression. We've got an interview with Dr. Columbus Batiste on being selfish, a cure for a stressed and broken heart. And we have Dr. Joel Kahn on Beyond Cholesterol, the truth about supplements, fats, and modern food myths. These are 3 scintillating interviews from 3 brilliant cardiologists, all available to you for free. As soon as we finish the broadcast of today's episode, you can watch all of these available on the replays page until we get ready for tomorrow's episode. And of course, with an empowerment package, you'll own all of them and all 45 extended interviews for life. Of course, every day of the summit, we also have 3 more recipes of the day from FRN's lead dietitian and recipe developer, Nicole D'Andrea Russert. Today's recipes of the day start with toasted seed slaw. Enjoy the heart-healthy benefits of this delicious slaw, crunchy, aromatic, and infused with spices like cumin seed, celery seed, and coriander seed. This dish is a delicious defense against cardiovascular disease and a delight for your palate. And it's the perfect side dish or topping for your favorite savory plant-based dishes. So it's a wonderful, healthy go-to any day of the week. Next, we have spinach artichoke burgers, which are also our recipe demo of the day today. These burgers are a friendly feast for your heart that brings zesty flavors of your favorite dip to a nutritious plant-based burger. Loaded with garlic and spinach and artichokes and a kick of jalapeno, only if you like a little spice, plus a mix of sunflower seeds and rolled oats and white beans, these burgers pack a delicious punch of flavor and an abundance of fiber and protein. And finally today we have sweet cherry cobbler. This cobbler is as good for your heart as it is for your taste buds. It's made with wholesome ingredients like antioxidant-rich cherries, fiber-filled oats, potassium-packed bananas, and plant-based milk, then sweetened naturally with maple syrup, and it comes together in minutes. Plus, it's a comforting hug in a bowl, and it's sure to nourish your heart and lift your spirits with every delicious spoonful. If you're somebody who is interested in recipes, if you want to bring this food revolution home into your kitchen, then I do want to share another resource with you all as well, which I've mentioned a couple times already in this summit. It's powered by plants. This is our brand new forthcoming cookbook that Nicole and I put together. And it's got some absolutely gorgeous recipes, beautiful pictures. And we go over in depth the nutrients that are challenging for many people to get in their diets and how to maximize your intake of them on a whole foods plant-based diet. So we go over those specific nutrients from protein to iodine to zinc to selenium to magnesium, fiber, and we look at which foods have them and which don't and how to get them from plant foods, and in the few cases where supplements may be beneficial, like especially with vitamin B12. We go over all that, and then we give you incredible 30-minute or less recipes that are super delicious, that are loaded with the specific nutrients that can best help you to thrive. So I hope that's helpful to some of you. It comes out on October 29th, but you can pre-order your copy today by going to poweredbyplantsbook.com. Again, that is poweredbyplantsbook.com. All right, folks, it's hard to believe it, but we're now approaching the end of day 5 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. To express your opinions on today's episode and the summit so far, and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comment section on our broadcast page. Make sure you refresh the comments using the button you see down there so you can see the latest ones. Come on back and join us tomorrow when we go live at 7:45 a.m. Pacific Time, that's 10:45 Eastern, 2:45 p.m. GMT, or at 11 a.m. Eastern when we start rolling episode 6, Diabesity Unmasked, the truth about weight loss, diabetes, and food freedom. We're going to look at how it's possible that people living in the wealthiest nations on earth are simultaneously overfed and undernourished. We're going to look at our modern obesity and diabetes reality, at our society's obsession with body image and weight loss, how calorie restriction backfires, and we're going to look at how the corporate food manipulation tactics are making it nearly impossible not to overeat. You're going to find out what really works if you want to reclaim food freedom and become the author of your food life, and also if you want to prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes. In the meanwhile, post your comments and share in the conversation. Catch and watch the replay right on this page as soon as we're done here today. Watch today's extended interviews also on this page. Check out our recipes of the day, including Nicole's recipe demo video. And of course, check out the empowerment package so you can own it all for life. We are wishing you a wonderful and healthy and thriving day. This is Ocean Robbins, signing off from day 5 in the Food Revolution Summit. And here's a peek at what's coming up tomorrow. What's the real reason we see such a massive connection between obesity and diabetes? Why does shedding weight seem like an uphill battle while gaining it can feel effortless? What is diabetes? And why is it one of the fastest growing diseases on the planet?
Currently, over 70% of the US population is considered overweight or obese, which is really remarkable. If you think about it, that means being at a healthy weight puts people in the minority in the US population.
It's very easy for someone who has never lived in a larger body to cast criticism on someone who is, and that's a terrible thing to do. Because I'm going to tell you now, people who've lived in larger bodies, people like myself, we know more about moderation than anyone else in the world. We know more about overexertion. We know more about restriction than anyone could ever possibly understand, and it's failed us every single time.
In this episode, we'll unravel the true causes of the diabesity epidemic.
We have, as Garth Davis puts it, an obesogenic environment.
The foods that we have in our food supply today are literally, truly, actually physiologically addictive.
Many people that are obese end up becoming diabetic because it starts with insulin resistance. They start to get resistant to the insulin, probably more because of this phenomenon called lipotoxicity.
So type 2 diabetes is caused by the excess kind of ectopic accumulation of body fat.
You'll discover how your brain's survival instincts can keep you stuck in cycles of dieting and struggle. We'll uncover the truth about intermittent fasting, weight loss drugs, diet patterns, and what actually works to prevent and reverse diabetes.
By changing your diet, lowering your saturated fat intake, and losing excess, particularly visceral fat, the kind of fat coiled around your digestive organs, can improve your insulin sensitivity, sometimes enough to completely reverse diabetes, where you have normal blood sugars on a normal diet, which is where we all want to be.
Say yes to the future you want.
This is your journey to embracing your uniquely right-sized body. Let's do this. No matter where you come from or what you've been through, the simple truth is you are meant to thrive. You deserve boundless energy, a clear mind, and a lean and healthy body. You deserve to feel confident and clear about what you eat and why. The Food Revolution Summit is packed with insights, and trying to catch and absorb all of them can be hard. That's why we created the Empowerment Package. With your Empowerment Package, you can own the entire summit, plus all the transcripts and loads of bonus materials for life. Absorb this life-changing material at a pace that's comfortable and easy for you. Join this movement. Support this mission. Buy your Empowerment Package today.